Amazing. So welcome everybody to, I think this is number 8, our 8th week of Reawaken and Rediscover. This is the first thing I've ever committed to do like 8 weeks in a row. Like my podcast, most of you probably are aware, I was like, rebrand, I'm going to release an episode every week. And like that hasn't happened. So, but this is like so much more fun for me to be here with you guys, actually engaging with you guys and being able to contribute even more with like any questions that you have come up. So I just want to mention before I start and before I forget as well, I have just opened doors to the second round of the Unfuck Yourself relationship program that I'm incredibly excited about, and there's only a few spaces left. So if any of you desire to actually have more of you, receive more of you, create a phenomenal relationship with you, that's a 12-week program where we do 1 call a week for 12 weeks. You get 3 private sessions with me, PDF home plays every single week, and a Telegram group for ongoing support. So I'm just going to mention that, and I'll pop the link in the chat at the end of the call and in the recordings as well. But I just wanted to let you all know that because I'm really excited about it. Thank you, Wendy. Wendy was there with me last time, and Judy. Amazing. So as you guys are probably aware, today I wanted to speak to the topic of going beyond the need of validation. Because for those of you that were here with me on last week's call, there was, I don't even know what happened in that call still. However, there was like so much stuff that actually come up, and what we got to at the end was this like need of validation, and this need of validation for like our very existence. And I really wanted to dive into that and unpick that and see what is actually possible beyond it. Because I know validation is one of those topics that we all have. Like there's no one that I know of that doesn't actually seek validation outside of them for, for something. And if we were willing to go beyond this need of validation, then what we have access to is ourselves. Because this whole thing of like validation, when you look for validation, you're actually invalidating your very being. When you actually seek that, you begin to look external to you to prove something rather than look internal and actually just receive everything that you are. So I would love to ask all of you, like, what are you actually looking to be validated for? And you can unmute yourself, or you can just pop in the chat, because I really want to start like dissolving this whole idea of you're the only one that's insane looking for validation, like, because I think so many people are not totally willing to go, oh my God, I'm totally looking for validation in this area. And if we were actually willing to say it, like so much can dissolve just that. So you can pop it in the chat. What are you looking to be validated for? What comes up? I've got my magic, my value, existing that I'm here just to be me, a business owner. We could say your worth, my capacity to make money. Yeah, so cool. So that people would like to hear me. I've always wanted to be a singer. I feel I need other people to validate that I have a talent. Yeah, cool. Well, first of all, thank you for your vulnerability, and let's clear that. So everything that is for all of you, can we destroy and uncreate it, please? Right, wrong, good, bad, pod, poc, all name, shorts, boys, poets, and beyond. So for those of you that have never heard that before, that's the Access Consciousness Clearing Statement. You can go to theclearingstatement.com for more information, but it's basically just this magic wand that clears the energies that are actually keeping you stuck in that thing, that part of reality that you're actually looking to change. So first, I want to mention that validation can only come from outside of us. And validation is actually making something right. So when we're seeking validation, first of all, you are seeking something outside of you, and you're trying to make something right. So you're trying to make you right or correct, or prove that you're good, or prove that you have a talent in order to actually just receive it and just be everything that you are. So if you can remember that, like validation is something that only can ever come from outside of you. And it's always you looking to make you or something connected to you, right? So it's always based on a judgment. So how many of you have made like the sum total of what you can choose or what you can receive about you the amount that others validate you. And everything that is times a gazillion, weirdest, or uncreative, please. Right, wrong, good, bad, pod, poc, or name, shorts, boys, povits, and beyonds. So this topic come up, I just want to give a little background story. So last week, where this kind of come from was I was speaking about stuff that was coming up with my breakup. And for those of you that, some of you are probably aware, I broke up with my ex. I'm not even sure now, maybe 6 months ago. It was quite a while ago. And some of you are aware that the last 6 to 8 weeks, there's been quite a lot of stuff coming up in regards to it that's never been there before. And I realize there's a lot of stuff regarding this topic of validation. And so the awareness that I got and how this kind of come to a head was I was at the beach, I think it was, and I had this longing for my ex to text me. I started going into this total panic state of it's been this many hours, he hasn't texted me, he hasn't he hasn't responded to my message. And it wasn't even it was just a normal message of, I think, how are you or how's your day? And so I started noticing myself going to this total state of panic. And what I did is I started looking at that. I sat with that, I lowered my walls and barriers, and I started just relaxing. And I was like, okay, what is this? What is this really? And is it that I'm missing him, or is it actually something else? And what come up was that him texting me would validate me. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. So what I'm actually seeking is validation. And then I was like, validation for what? And I got my very being. And I was like, wow, okay, so I'm looking for someone to validate my being, which is not actually possible because you cannot see what you be. No one can actually see what you be. So my next question to all of you is who or what are you seeking to validate your very being? Or who or what are you using as the only source of validation of your being that you will actually accept? What comes up for you? Who or what are you using as the only validation of your being that you'll accept? Because do you notice that sometimes people will compliment you or maybe acknowledge you, except you won't accept that? So who or what are you using as the only validation of your being that you will accept? Megan says money. Dessa says mum. For some people, it might be a lover or a partner. For some people, it might be dad. Stacey says grief, parents, or a master. Interesting. So this is the thing. It's what most people don't recognize is most people are not looking to be happy, weirdly, or create intimacy with ourselves, but we're actually looking for validation from others. So if you start looking at that, it's you want to start asking yourself, wait a second, how much of this is me looking for validation rather than intimacy or communion? Or am I looking for intimacy here, or am I actually looking for validation? Because this will actually gift you clarity on maybe why it's been more challenging to create intimacy or communion with someone, or why it may be a struggle to get to that space of gratitude for you. Because if you're looking for validation, you're already looking for something or someone outside of you to actually validate everything that you are. So Wendy says some weird narcissistic energy. Interesting. So Kat says, I have so much anti-consciousness around this. I'm pretending I'm not looking for validation at all. Cool. That's not wrong either. But what is actually possible beyond it? And this is the thing with this idea of validation, so many of our unwillingness to be vulnerable is actually because we don't want to go beyond the need for validation. We don't want to be vulnerable enough with ourselves to actually just receive the gift that we be. We've decided that so many of us won't receive that until it's validated by another. So many of us kind of growing up in this reality have been taught that if we attract somebody into our life, if we attract a romantic partner into our life, then we'll finally have ourselves, because someone will finally validate your being by loving you. So how many of you have decided that the only validation you'll accept is through somebody loving you? And everything that is times a gazillion. Will you just join and create it, please? Right, wrong, good, bad, pod, poc, all name, shorts, boys, povits, and beyonds. So where I started like looking more into this, which may contribute to like all of you with this area, is I started looking at, okay, where does that actually come from? Where does that need of validation actually come from? And what I realized is actually growing up is that my mum or dad had no receiving of me. And I started looking back at my childhood, and I was like, okay, so if I'm not willing to receive myself, right, I'm looking for validation. Did I have people in my life that actually received me? And I got to know. And I was like, okay, so truth, did mum or dad? And I got to know. So I'd encourage you guys to look at like, truth, did anybody truly receive you as a child? Could they actually receive you? Yeah. And so for me, what I realized is because there was like no receiving, I presumed that as a kid, my being wasn't enough. That my being was actually deficient in something. And so then what occurs is I began, and this is what we all do, we begin to start to look outside of us for validation. Am I good? Am I right? Am I correct? So what age were you all when you actually gave yourself up because someone else didn't receive you or hear you? Two. And everything that is, will you guys destroy and uncreate it, please? Judy says in the womb, right, wrong, good, bad, pod, poc, all name, shorts, boys, povits, and beyonds. And the interesting thing is, if your parents could not receive themselves, could they actually receive you? Because remember this thing, if you cannot receive yourself, you cannot actually receive another. So when we actually start looking for validation from someone or something, we've actually decided that our being is deficient. That's why we're actually seeking validation, because somewhere we've decided our being is deficient in something. Do you guys get that? I think that's what we're actually doing. So how much energy are you all then using to create validation, like people validating you as the source of being and receiving? Are you choosing? And everything this is times a gazillion, will you destroy and create it, please? Right, wrong, good, bad, pod, poc, all name, shorts, boys, povits, and beyond. So the thing is, like, if you require other people's validation, all you can receive is what they can see. And all you can receive is actually what they are willing to receive of themselves, which for most people are like very little. So this is where it's like, how much, when we talk about this thing of like, I'd like to have more of myself or receive more of myself or find more of myself. The thing is, you're never going to get there if you're looking for validation. Because if you require it in any way, all you can receive is what that person or someone else can see. However, you cannot see that which you be. So this is kind of like the double-edged sword, is like, it's actually what we be that is that gift. It's actually what we be that is the value, which is beyond doing. It's beyond our capacities. It's beyond speaking. It's literally what we be. So if you don't have to be validated by anybody else, this is the only time you can actually have you. But if you have to be validated by anyone else, you can never actually have you, because the degree to which you receive yourself will be always based on the amount that somebody else can see or receive you. Does this make sense? You're all like, cool. Does anyone have any questions so far? What's coming up for you? No? Everyone's good. Cool. So Judy says, or Wendy says, it's not ours and it was our awareness of those around us. Exactly. It's like, how much of your need for validation does actually not belong to you? How much of your need of validation is your awareness of everywhere your mom or everywhere your dad look to you to validate their existence, look to you to validate whether they were doing a good job. And then how much of that didn't belong to them either. So this is this thing, it's like so much of us will use this need of validation to literally totally reject and refuse receiving what we actually be. And Judy says, how do we go about that? Do you mean, how do we go about changing it? How do we go about changing it? Cool. So there's questions. So first of all, I want to mention to you guys, well, there's something coming up, this whole like validating your existence, because I know that's where we got to on last week's call. So how many of you are actually looking through other people's eyes to validate your existence? Now, I'll kind of add to that. Do you believe that you don't exist or you won't exist unless you're getting the validation of your existence through other people's projections, expectations, separations, judgments, and rejections of you? Because this is the thing, like if nobody validates you, if there's no like judgments or separations or rejections, then what? Like, do you exist? But how much are you determining like how much of you can receive, the value of you in the world, what you can choose, what business you can create based on the projections, expectations, separations, judgments, and rejections other people have of you? Does this make sense, or do I need to explain it in another way? You were just staring at the screen like, I don't know what's happening.
Can I ask a question, please, Ashley?
Go for it.
There's this thing coming up when you're talking about this, of we don't exist in a vacuum. You know, we are part of oneness. We are connected to everyone, everything. So, and I get you can't see your being, but there has to not have any kind of validation is almost saying like not to have any relationship, because any kind of relationship in one way or another has some kind of validation, judgment, opinion, point of view. Isn't it? Is it more how we react to that external stuff rather than try and, I don't know, to me it almost feels like we need to be completely separate to not look for that outside validation. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And also validation is different from acknowledgement. But how much of that is your need of reactive reality? I feel like I have to be separate to never require validation again. Is that your
That's sort of the energy? That's sort of the energy that's coming up. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting because validation is actually a need of reactive reality. It's not actually something that creates. When you're looking for validation, you have to literally look to everybody else outside of you, look for their judgments of you, their rejections of you, where they're separating from you. Literally. So you're looking for these reactions in others in order to validate, like literally your very being, like what you can choose, what you can't choose, like what you have access to and what you don't. So the interesting thing is like validation is actually a need of reactive reality, whereas acknowledgement is something completely different. If you go beyond this need of validation, then what exists is acknowledgement and receiving. So
Right.
so this is where people get acknowledgement and validation confused, because acknowledgement is, so you can't validate greatness, you can only acknowledge greatness. You can only actually validate a limitation, as in make it right. Greatness can only be observed and acknowledged. So this is where an acknowledgement is actually when someone acknowledges you, the being. But validation, which so many of us are actually looking for and don't realize, is always looking outside of you for someone to tell you that you're right, or you're on the right track, or you're correct, or that you're good, or yes, you do have a talent. Does that make sense?
It does. However, wouldn't even acknowledgement you can only be acknowledged for what somebody else sees, which isn't your being.
No, so this is where, like, this is where the tricky thing is no one can truly acknowledge your being but you.
Mm.
So this is where we have to recognize, like, the whole time we're looking outside of us for someone to validate any part of us or acknowledge any part of us, no one can truly acknowledge our very being but us. And so this comes back to the thing of, like, actually creating a phenomenal relationship with you. It begins with actually acknowledging you. If you will not acknowledge you, you cannot receive the acknowledgement somebody else has of you. And a lot of people want somebody else to see them in love relationships, you know, in romantic relationships, in friendships. But if you don't acknowledge you or see you, no attention anyone gives you will ever be enough. No acknowledgement someone gives you will ever be enough. So this is where this is about you actually beginning to truly acknowledge you. Does that make more sense?
Clearly, there's more receiving needed or required in this direction.
Well, there's another thing that's pinging that I just want to tell you, which might create space for all of you. So the other thing is, and I remember Gary Douglas saying this, like, I don't even remember when or on what call, is that which you seek validation for is that which you will not receive. That which you seek validation for is also that which you will not receive. If you're seeking validation for being, so say for me, being a great facilitator, it's also that which I will not receive. Because if I was willing to receive it within myself, I would not need to look external to others. So everything this is, and everything you're seeking validation for that you will not receive, will you destroy and uncreate that time to get so yet? Right, wrong, good, bad, pod, poc, or name, shorts, boys, povits, and beyond. So this is the tricky thing with you looking for what you're seeking validation for. You can write that list. Remember what I asked you at the start of, like, what are you seeking to be validated for, or what do you desire to be validated for? That list of, like, being a great singer, like, I don't even remember the rest, but you want to ask yourself, okay, truth, am I actually willing to receive this? So this comes back to, like, this receiving thing as well, because your need to be validated by others makes it impossible to receive how brilliant you actually are. So how many of you have been looking to go, like, how many of you have caught yourself asked, like, how do I receive more of myself? Or how do I have more of myself? Or how do I love myself? How do I create a relationship with myself? Like, if you've caught yourself doing any of that, like, how do I see my brilliance? If in any part of you, you've made the sum total of your value or your value based on what other people think of you, see of you, believe of you, then it makes it impossible to actually receive how brilliant you are. So this is where that need for validation actually cuts off your ability to acknowledge and receive yourself. And again, is that need of validation even yours? And I would also ask the question, like, what am I using this need of validation to prove? Because if validation is actually a reactive reality, remember, we use these reactive realities in order to prove something, in order to prove our presumptive reality about us real and true. So then you can ask, what have I presumed here? Or what is my presumptive reality about me? Melanie says, I've been single for 2.5 years. I really enjoy it most of the time. And I just realized that when I miss having a boyfriend, I actually seek validation, not a relationship. That's so cool, because that's exactly what, like, the awareness that I got to as well, like last week or the week before. I was like, wow, it's like everywhere, even everywhere I decided that I was missing, like, company was actually missing, like, I was seeking validation. I was like kind of looking for my existence of my being, basically looking for my existence as outside of me, rather than just like being okay with like who I am. So cool. Yes, we have another question, and then I'll like give you guys some questions that you can actually use.
Okay, hi.
Hi.
What came for me is that I will talk about myself, that I was seeking validation because it's the program of this reality since we were in school. Yes, you're good, you're right. So this is the programming. So if I need to be beyond this validation, I need to trust myself. And if I want to trust myself and what I be that no one see, I need to leap. So what would it take to trust myself to leap?
Oh, to leap. Okay.
Yeah. So I want to leap with something no one will help me with, because I don't want to seek validation anymore. And it's something new. How to trust myself with this point?
So what if it's not about trusting yourself though? What if it's about being willing to just be like, me being me is the gift. My very being is the gift. Whether I'm good, whether I'm bad, whether it's right, whether it's wrong. So to take the singing, for example, like, you being you is actually the gift. Where are you placing the thing that you're doing as the sole value of you? And this is where, like I said at the start, like, where are you placing something outside of you as the sole, like, kind of value of you? So whether that's your singing, whether that's your business, whether that's how much money you have, whether that's how many clients you have, whether that's a love relationship, that's actually not you. Like, that's still you seeking validation based on something outside of you. But you being is the gift. It doesn't matter whether you can sing or not. Does that make sense?
Yes, for me, yes.
So it's kind of like the thing which we talk about in the Right Voice for You classes, like, you might be seeking to be validated for being like a good facilitator, right? But that's, you facilitating has nothing to do with you. Your very being is actually the gift. You being here right now, you showing up on this call, actually not even showing up in this call, I mean, you being here on planet Earth right now is the gift. Whether you ever choose anything or not, whether you ever choose any greater consciousness, whether you ever stop making yourself wrong, whether you ever have any more money in your bank account, whether you ever start a business, whether you ever have any clients show up, that doesn't matter. That's not relevant. You being here is the gift.
And it means I am enough.
And it means that you're enough. You being you is enough. So this is where you have to start watching yourself and catching yourself, like this validation piece. Like I said, you can only validate something outside of you.
Yeah, it's what we.
Pardon?
I said that we do it in everything, even at work. Evaluation for everyone, for the workers, for students. You want to say something that gets my energy. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like where it begins is you going, I'm just actually a gift. And so what actually really contributed to me, I'll give you guys some questions as well that you can start playing with, but what contributed to me with when I started noticing like, oh, wow, what I was actually seeking was not like, I wasn't missing someone. I wasn't looking for a text message. I was seeking validation. I still looked at that and I was like, wow, I'm seeking validation that I was a good partner, that I'm a good person, that I'm worth even still speaking to. And so I got that awareness and I was like, oh, wow, okay. And then I was like, wait a second, me, like I'm just a gift. I'm a gift. It doesn't matter what I do, what I choose, like I'm just a gift. And so what it kept coming back to is anytime like that energy come up, because it hasn't come up in that way before, because I haven't been through a breakup since starting using these tools. When it come up, I was like, I acknowledged what it was. I recognized what it was. And I literally actually, whoops, that's my microphone. I placed my hands like somewhere on my body and I was like, you got this. You're a gift. You're a gift. It doesn't matter who messages you, who doesn't message you, who validates you, who doesn't, where you're at right now. It doesn't matter that you seem like a hot mess right now. You're a gift. And very quickly that just like relaxed, like I relaxed into that. And when you relax, you start having access to more of your being. And when you start having access to more of your being, you start accessing greater receiving, which means all of a sudden I had access to me. I began to receive me again. Because in that moment, those 5 minutes, those 15 minutes, I obviously went out of being the gift, and into this external thing, insanity of validation, which we all do. That's what we're taught to do. So this is where it's like, it's not about like anything other than you already be the gift. That's it. Whether you're in relationship, not, whether you have money, whether you don't, like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So this is what I'm trying to get you to when I say like validation actually, when you seek validation, it's actually the invalidation of your very being, because that which you're seeking validation for is the thing outside of you. That am I good at this? Am I good at that? Am I a good person? Am I good at facilitating? Do I have money? What does that mean about me? So when you're doing that, you're invalidating the gift that you just be already without having anything. You can live in a gutter and you're still such a freaking gift. So everything that doesn't allow you to all claim, and acknowledge that. Will you just join on greater, please? Right, wrong, good, bad, pod, poc, or name, shorts, boys, poets, and beyond. So as I was saying before, your need to be validated, your need to look external makes it impossible to receive how brilliant you are. So that's what I was saying when I started looking at the text message as my sum total of the value of me. That, putting my attention on that, made it impossible to receive my brilliance at that time. And what I had to do to get back to that is get to a space of being, because that which you be, you can then receive. So however you allow yourself to access greater being, for me, it was through relaxation. For most people, it's through relaxation. So this will be probably a tool that you can start using when you start noticing yourself going into, that energy of panic, or that energy of, you all know what it's like when you're seeking validation, whether it's the text message, whether it's the person saying something, whether it's people messaging you after class, like whether it's you singing and then, you're waiting to see what people say. Like, you all know that kind of like panic or that like contraction, like when you're seeking that. Stop, relax. Remind yourself. If you have to put a hand on your body to get you present again, do that. Relax, lower your walls and barriers and go, wait a sec. And you can ask, like, what if I decided I'm deficient in? What am I actually seeking here? Because what if you're actually seeking in that moment every single time was you acknowledging you? And what if in those moments that you start going into that freak out and seeking something outside of you, it's actually just your very body and being letting you know, wait a second, you've just actually gone away from you. You've just gone away from acknowledging you. You've just flipped that and now you're starting to look outside of you. So what if it was just actually a gift of awareness? What if it was actually just your being or your body just letting you know, wait a second, you've just gone from here to out here. Flip that again. So as I was saying, like if you're always functioning from this place of like, see how valuable I am, or basically that, like someone see how valuable I am, like you can't ever see how valuable you are, and you can't actually ever get the contribution that you already are being and that you can be. So some tools just before we finish as well. So as I already said, like what I mentioned, relax, get present, put a hand on your body, whatever is required, lower your barriers, start accessing more of that being. And just like you can ask yourself these questions, like, what am I looking to be validated for? What am I looking to be validated for? I can send these out on the email as well. What am I looking to be validated for? And then, have I already presumed the opposite to be true? Because remember, that which you're seeking to be validated for is that which you won't receive. So have I already presumed the opposite to be true? So if you're looking to be validated to be, I don't know why the singing thing keeps coming up, so I can't remember who wrote that, but obviously it's very relevant right now. So if you're looking to be validated that you're a good singer, okay, truth, have I already presumed the opposite to be true? Wow, I have. Okay, so it's only the fact that I presume the opposite to be true, that I'm not a good singer, that I'm actually looking to be validated for it. If I was willing to acknowledge me, I now no longer have to look for validation because I'm already receiving that about me. So number 3, you can ask, like, what have I decided the validation will give me that I cannot give to myself? You could also ask, what am I actually seeking? And like the main question would actually be after that, like, what am I looking to be validated for, is, am I willing to receive that which I'm looking to be validated for? Because this is the really interesting thing. Like you may come to this call or you listen to the recordings and you're like, oh, I've been doing this, like trying to receive myself for, this many years and this many calls, and it hasn't changed. And I'd love to stop, looking outside of me for validation, but it's not changing no matter what tools I'm using. Ask yourself, be honest with yourself. Am I willing to receive that which I'm looking to be validated for? Am I willing to receive it? And if it's a yes, then you can ask, what beyond this reality acknowledgement can I be for me here? What beyond this reality acknowledgement can I be for me here, or can I be for me today? And just again, from that space of relaxation, like allow that to start showing you. Yeah, and Angelique says, be it. Exactly. And this is what's going to occur. It's like so all of these tools, the whole point of this is 85% of you guys changing anything is actually having the awareness of it. So these calls are to like remind you, gift you the awareness of all of this. Most of the time, and well, not all the time, but a lot of the time, just you having the awareness of what you're choosing, or, oh, wow, okay, that hasn't changed because I'm actually not willing to receive that which I'm looking to be validated for. A lot of the time, like that awareness is what actually changes it. Because remember, the clearing statements and all of these tools, they don't make the choice for you. You use these tools and these clearings to basically like clear the path of any kind of stuff that keeps you from choosing, but you still have to choose. So this is the thing, like when you start asking these questions or just having this awareness oftentimes then without even having to like do it, you kind of just make the choice to go, okay, I'm over that, or that's not working for me anymore. And what you'll do is you'll start becoming it. So I don't often use a lot of tools or do a lot of tools anymore. I very rarely do any of the clearing statements, like very rarely, unless there's something new that's coming up. So for me, my breakup, there's been lots of new stuff because I haven't been through a breakup since using these tools. So there's been lots of new stuff so I've been using the clearing statement more than usual and using these tools more than usual in certain areas. So you will, the more you actually, the more you have the awareness of like what is true, you just start actually becoming it. You'll just start being it when you're willing. So, so I hope that's a contribution. I hope that made sense to all of you. There was like a little bit of resistance at the start. I was like, oh God, I'm doing the thing again where I'm like, come with me, let's go here. And I also get my business is like, okay, this needs to be paid now. Like this needs to be like shorter sessions, actually 30 minutes, and then actually start doing the 2 calls a month where we can dive into lots of clearings and lots more questions as well. So I will get that up and running. And as I said at the start of this, like it's 2 more weeks until the Unfuck Yourself 12-week relationship program starts. It honestly was a game changer last time. I'm so thrilled. So if like, it's kind of like, it's this every week, but it's like a full 60-minute call. And we dive into really the tools to actually receive, have, and be all of you, and then change all of your relationships in the process. So as I said, I will send that out to you guys in the recording, the link. As I said, there's a few spots left, and I will send out those questions as well that you can start asking. But what is truly possible beyond validation? And what if this need of validation was not even your reality? Remember, it's just a need of reactive reality. What if this was never your reality to begin with? And if you're truly willing to, it really isn't until you're truly willing to acknowledge and receive yourself that validation will no longer be relevant for you. So what time of the day is Unfuck Yourself? It is same time as last time, 8:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, 6:30 a.m. Canadian time each day, 12:30 p.m. European time every Thursday, I want to say. But there's quite a few different topics and stuff now. So anyway, guys, I'm grateful for you all. Thank you so much. What else is possible? And I don't have any topics that are like pinging for me next week. And as you know, there was also like your choice to send in questions. So maybe next week it will just be based on the questions that you send. But you can go onto that form and fill it out whenever you want to. Like if something comes up tomorrow, just go into the form and fill it out. And I just look at it, go through all the questions, and then whatever's kind of pinging and I get would be the greatest contribution. Or if there's like certain questions that we can kind of just speak to like one topic about, then that's what I do. So I'm grateful. I'll see you guys next week. Bye for now.
Okay.